This is not a mere hair color change. It is the moment a chapter closed in modern pop history. For years, she hid behind baggy, neon clothing, protecting her body and private life from the media. In 2021, Billie Eilish, with a single Vogue cover, offered herself up to the mercy of the entire world. She stripped her armor, embraced the pin-up aesthetic, the ultimate symbol of sexual objectification, and traded her neon green hair for platinum blonde. But why? Why did the queen of anti-pop transition to an image that provoked the very thing she fought against, public scrutiny and the examination of her body? Was this move a retreat, or the most audacious psychological offensive of her career? This is the story of Billie Eilish's greatest risk. It is the story of her transition from a strategy of concealment to a struggle for self-defense and defining her own identity on her own terms. This video will analyze how Eilish ultimately seized control by shedding her armor, examine the personal struggles like Tourette syndrome behind this decision, and how this move triggered the artistic and lyrical depth of the Happier Than Ever album. The logic of concealment, baggy clothes and psychological armor. The baggy clothes aesthetic adopted by Billie Eilish in her initial career phase, 2017 to 2021, was one of the most distinct challenges thrown at the pop music scene. These clothes served not merely as a fashion statement, but as a psychological armor against the media and public opinion. The threat of being automatically drawn into a cycle of objectification due to her fame at a young age was real. Therefore, Billie's conscious choice was to minimize the visibility of her body. This forced listeners and critics to focus solely on her facial features, vocal talent, and lyrics. Fashion, for her, transcended an art form, becoming an active defense mechanism that protected her privacy and mental health. This armor empowered Eilish to focus on her creativity and launch a silent rebellion against the shallow beauty standards imposed by the industry. This logic of concealment was in direct philosophical harmony with Eilish's whisper vocal technique in her music. While the baggy clothes protected her from the media noise outside, the whispered vocals invited listeners inside, into her most vulnerable, introspective, and claustrophobic world. This vocal style, supported by Phineas O'Connell's lo-fi techniques, forced the listener to lean in to hear the words, creating a sense of intimate complicity. This was an act of exposing a naked soul inside while wearing heavy armor outside. This duality so cemented Eilish's anti-pop identity that her look became as valued by her fans as her music, a genuine declaration of authenticity. This positioned Billie Eilish not just as an artist but as a leader in a global conversation about body and self. One of the most significant personal struggles that complicated Eilish's decision to continue wearing this armor was her life with Tourette syndrome. The anonymity provided by the baggy clothes helped the artist conceal her motor and vocal tics. However, as her fame grew, living under constant public scrutiny turned this into a major source of stress, especially during performances and social settings. Although Eilish shared her condition openly, increasing fame meant the psychological weight of the armor intensified. It became a burden to constantly hide not just from media attacks, but from the involuntary movements of her own body. This constant need for concealment, though initially aimed at protecting her fragile mental health, also deepened her internal identity conflict. Over time, this fashion choice transitioned from a means of protection into a new burden of expectation and criticism upon Eilish. The media and fans began expecting her to, quote, always stay this way, often issuing harsh judgments like, if she changes, she's a sellout. This expectation curtailed Eilish's freedom to explore her body and express her identity as a young adult woman. She realized she would be criticized regardless of whether she shed the armor to dress more feminine or kept it on. This created a dilemma for Eilish. Her identity was constantly being defined by external forces. It became inevitable that the next step in her artistic evolution would require shattering this prison. Eilish's decision to shed the armor was timed at one of the most strategic moments of her career. Instead of gradually removing it, she created a visual bomb with her 2021 British Vogue cover. This sudden, audacious transformation was a declaration that control remained entirely with her. If a change was to happen, she needed to initiate the change herself and preempt the media's scrutiny. This move nullified the media's attempts to label her stereotypically. By embracing the pin-up aesthetic, Eilish demonstrated that she could turn even a symbol of sexual objectification into a vehicle for her own will and autonomy under her own terms. This visual offensive signaled her psychological readiness and set the lyrical themes for her subsequent album. The Platinum Decision. The battle to reclaim identity. The decision to go platinum blonde and embrace the pin-up aesthetic on the Vogue cover was the biggest visual risk of Eilish's career, but it was fundamentally a battle to reclaim identity. This radical image change represented Eilish's desire to finally reclaim her autonomy and break free from the constraints of her anti-pop persona. While the baggy clothes protected her, they also trapped her in an image of perpetual childhood. The new blonde, fitted-out Eilish was declaring to the world that she was now an adult woman, an artist aware of her own sexual identity. This move predictably spurred media criticism, but this time, the criticism stemmed not from her choice to wear armor, but from her choice to define an identity based on her own will. The Vogue cover was not just a fashion shoot, it was a media manifesto. Eilish utilized the pin-up aesthetic, which typically presents the body as a sexual object, but did so on her own terms. Her explicit statement accompanying the cover was clear: "The moment I feel comfortable, I instantly get judged." This signaled that she accepted the constant surveillance from the media and fans, but would use the power of that surveillance to her advantage. She was saying, "You want to objectify me? Then I will present you with the most obvious symbol of objectification, but I retain control." This was Eilish's sharpest example of shifting from passive defense to active offense. The change in hair color also began as an act of concealment beyond mere aesthetic preference. Eilish realized that her neon green hair had become so synonymous with her identity that she was instantly recognizable anywhere. The months she spent wearing a platinum blonde wig provided her with a form of social anonymity. People became so accustomed to seeing her in a wig and hat that they didn't recognize her true identity. This gave her a luxury rarely afforded to a superstar: the ability to remain out of sight for a while longer. This shows how layered Eilish's image change strategy was, using her most visible identity marker to temporarily hide, while simultaneously preparing for a major public statement against public pressure. The psychological liberation generated by this image change also played a significant role in her struggle with Tourette's syndrome. While the baggy armor created the pressure to hide her tics, the new, self-assured image gave her the courage to display these tics with less stress in the public sphere. She no longer viewed herself as someone who must constantly hide, but as a self-confident adult woman. This mental shift helped Eilish claim ownership over her own physical and neurological condition. Although the image change was a shock to the outside world, for Eilish it signified internal empowerment in her battle with Tourette syndrome. This was her ultimate victory in synthesizing her authenticity and vulnerability. The platinum blonde decision became a metaphor for Eilish's entire career: the right to write her own rules. She dismantled the rules set by fans and the media regarding who she should be. This decision sent a powerful message to young people and artists alike: you are the sole authority over your body, your choices, and your evolution. This was not merely a fashion change, but a manifesto on autonomy and the right to individual identity, a sort of catalog re-recording, where Eilish reclaimed the masters of her own body image. 3. Happier Than Ever. Lyrical intervention and psychological risk. The Happier Than Ever album was Billie Eilish's first artistic response following her image change, and its lyrical content deeply analyzed the psychological risks and traumas that necessitated the visual transformation. The core theme of the album centered on toxic relationships fueled by fame, intrusion into personal space, and objectification. Since Eilish was no longer hiding behind baggy clothes, she was compelled to address these issues lyrically with much greater transparency and maturity. This posed a significant risk for the artist. The public would now directly link her lyrics to her new, adult, and sexualized public identity. The album, a lyrical intervention into her image change, peaked with the song Your Power, directly addressing the theme of objectification. The song lyrically critiques power dynamics and manipulation exerted over young women. Eilish's embrace of the pin-up aesthetic on the Vogue cover deepened the song's meaning. She was offering her own sexual power by her own will, while simultaneously critiquing its exploitation by others. This artistic duality was Eilish's most complex and brave step in her lyrical development. She positioned herself not just as a victim, but as a figure who publicly denounces the situation. The album's title track, Happier Than Ever, was the clearest example of lyrical revenge and liberation. The song structurally transformed from a calm, mournful ballad in the first half to a furious rock explosion in the second. This structural shift established a perfect parallel with her visual transformation. The stripping of the whisper armor, calm vocal, led to a sudden burst of emotional screaming, rock guitar. The lyrics delivered a sharp message to her former lover, and implicitly the media. When I'm away from you, I'm happier than ever. This demonstrated the magnitude of catharsis that Eilish achieved artistically by taking a personal risk with her image. The psychological risk Eilish faced resonated in songs like NDA, Non-Disclosure Agreement. These tracks addressed the pressures of fame, NDAs, and the paranoia caused by stalkers circling her home. Her image change did not alleviate this pressure but intensified it. However, this time, Eilish confronted these threats directly through music rather than hiding behind baggy clothes. Addressing these topics lyrically granted her artistic control and power. By turning her fears into a sound, she regained power over them. Ultimately, the Happier Than Ever album proved the artistic inevitability of the platinum hair decision. Had Eilish remained in her previous identity, she could not have written an album this personal and deep. This visual and lyrical transformation became a pivotal moment in her career, elevating Eilish from the baggy-clothed young girl persona to the status of a complex, mature, and self-governing artist. The album was living proof that personal risk can yield the greatest artistic reward. IV. The social media sieve, the sellout, accusation, and autocracy. Immediately following the shift to platinum hair and the pin-up aesthetic, Eilish faced the harshest criticism from her fanbase and social media, the sellout accusation. This charge stemmed from the fans' desire for ownership over her anti-pop identity. Fans believed her baggy clothes and dark aesthetic forged an exclusive bond with her, and they felt this bond was broken for the sake of commercial popularity. This reaction served as a lesson for modern celebrity culture. An artist can be imprisoned by the very image they create. Eilish countered this criticism, not with a traditional apology, but by making it part of her own narrative. In response to these accusations, the artist clarified that no one had the right to dictate what she wore on her body. This move brilliantly shifted the focus of the debate from fashion choice to the right of women to autonomy over their own bodies. This strategy proved Eilish's media genius. She turned a moment of crisis from a PR disaster into an opportunity for a feminist manifesto. Social media served as a sieve during this process. As fans saw Eilish's sincere posts showing her feeling happier and more confident in her new image, the wave of criticism slowly turned into empathy. The main reason Eilish established this autocracy was to take control of the media's narrative. Every media story about her baggy clothes in the past was an attempt at objectification. With the new image, Eilish removed the media's right to label her stereotypically. She was now defined by her own will, not by the media. Her social media strategy during this period reinforced her identity as a music industry. CEO Eilish acted as a CEO managing her own brand, story, and body. By standing against the sellout claims, she both refreshed the support of her loyal fanbase and sent a message to the music industry. Interfering with an artist's personal artistic development is a major commercial mistake. She demonstrated that by retaining the masters of her own image, creative control is the most valuable commercial asset. Eilish's defiance served as a permission slip for young female artists, showing them they do not have to be trapped in a single imposed image to maintain public affection. This process transformed Billie Eilish from merely a pop star into a cultural pioneer advocating for the right to authenticity and change for a generation growing up under media surveillance. Versus legacy and autonomy. From concealment to the right to narrate, the legacy Billie Eilish left behind with the platinum hair decision is one of the strongest declarations of autonomy in pop culture. She spent the first half of her career hiding behind baggy clothes to protect her privacy. In the second half, however, she accepted that privacy was impossible and instead advocated for autonomy by fully taking over the narrative. This is a candid record of the forced change and psychological struggle an artist undergoes while growing up in the public eye. Eilish's image change also left a permanent mark on the artist-fan relationship. She taught her fans the importance of setting boundaries. Her responses to fans who criticized her new look conveyed the message, "You love my music, not my life." This was a clear boundary drawn against the parasocial desire of fans for ownership over the artist's private life and body. This positioned Eilish as a leader, defending the right of public figures to draw their own boundaries. The ultimate triumph behind this visual and lyrical transformation was Eilish's ability to prove the authenticity of her art. The success of her music was not dependent on her hair color or the bagginess of her clothes. It was entirely dependent on the power of her art. Her ability to break the same records and receive the same critical acclaim with platinum blonde hair showed that her artistic genius transcended any visual mask. This sent a message to other artists and the industry that content matters more than image. Eilish's legacy is a, quote, permission slip for young artists. She demonstrated that they do not have to be trapped in a single, imposed image to maintain public affection. She proved that she could be successful, whether dressed baggy or fitted, with platinum blonde or neon green hair. This process elevated Billie Eilish from merely a pop star to a cultural pioneer, advocating for the right to authenticity and change. Ultimately, Billie Eilish's platinum blonde decision, despite being the biggest risk of her life, was her greatest victory. By shedding her armor, she seized control over her body from the media and turned it into an instrument of her own will. This action not only allowed her to heal herself but also showed Gen Z that they have the right to tell their own stories, at their own pace, and on their own terms. Billie Eilish used mystery as a weapon, but she left behind the right to narrate as a legacy.